another packed house tonight. I absolutely love to see it. I know Father Clarke is going to kick off the Agape Latte season in the right fashion. It's our first one of the year, if you don't know. And so just for people that don't know Father Clarke, I want to give a quick introduction. Father Clarke teaches courses in the area of Asian history with a particular focus on history and on ongoing experience in Chinese Catholic communities. As a Jesuit, Father Clarke is very interested in the work on the Society of Jesus and promoting East-West cultural exchange from the time of the late Ming Dynasty, and so researches the life and work such as people as Matteo Ricci. He also leads study tours and pilgrimages to China. Other areas of academic interest include the role of the Catholic Church in the development of art and photography in contemporary China, the history of the pilgrimage in China, and the development of Chinese Christian iconography. He is also interested in indigenous history and issues in Australia. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Father Clarke.
Thank you, Tim. I think that's called extra credit. The good news is, did we give it up for our musicians? Can we hear it one more time? And because they're so good, why don't we just quote St. Augustine once more, who says, what does he say? He says a lot of crazy stuff, actually, but he does say, those who sing pray twice. Why don't we pray twice? I'll stand in the middle. Yeah, all right, help. I'll do the melody. We can do it.
I forgot my harmony.
Want me to do that? Yeah, okay, that's good. Okay.
All right. That's where we're starting. You ready?
Look at the camera too.
Okay, yeah. All right.
As I went
Down in the valley to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Come on, fathers, let's go down, come on down. Come on, fathers, let's go down in the valley to pray. As I went down in the valley to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Come on, sisters, let's go down, come on down. Come on, sisters, let's go down in the valley to pray. As I went down in the valley to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Come on, brothers, let's go down, come on down. Come on, brothers, let's go down in the valley to pray. As I went down in the valley to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Come on, sinners, let's go down, come on down. Come on, sinners, let's go down in the valley to pray. They're pretty good, aren't they? I'll tell you what. Look, I've had a horrendous day. I've had a really long and busy day. So some of my talks may be a bit, okay, we need to work with the camera. Sorry, mate. Got to look after the workers. So, look, I was asked to come along and tell a couple of stories and begin this week of Espresso Your Faith, and really just by talking about what is a journey of faith. And I was invited. I've got no reason why. My students who are here have heard all my jokes. I've only got one joke. Mushroom walks into a bar, says to a barman, I want a drink. The barman says no. He says, what do you mean? I'm a fun guy. That's the only joke I have. And it gets worse from there. So some of my students are here, but I was asked to actually tell a couple of stories and tell the stories about faith. Apparently what I should have done is, in terms of truth in advertising, I should say, g'day. Because that's what the poster says, right? So g'day. Tonight I'm actually going to talk about, a lot of students here, they come up and they ask, priests on campus, brothers on campus, sisters on campus, how did you become
a sister? How did you become a Jesuit priest? And that's it's a great question, because it's also like, well, how did you become a nursing student? How did you become a professor? How did you become someone who loves serving here at Hillside? And our staff at Hillside, aren't they great? Give it up for them. Sadly, most of them are trying to get home, of course. And it's a great question, and I will answer it, but can I go another way? Can I actually say, I think the real important question, rather, is how did I become a Catholic? How did I become a believer? How did I become a person of faith? Like many of you, I suspect, in this room, I was baptised as a child, as an infant. I was about 2 weeks old. Here's a trivia pursuit question for next year. I was born in Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea. Those of you in Asia and the World 1 will actually know where that is. Shout out for Asia and the World. Extra credit, all of you. I'm going to take it off at the end of the semester, it doesn't matter. And so I was taken back, I was baptised, and so I was a member of a Catholic family. This was who we were, this was our identity. The Clarkes and my mother's side are Foleys, Irish Catholic Australians. And they baptised me, and that's all good, and so we would, then after a long, long time, there's too much trivia here, but after a long time we came back to Australia. And for me, part of my identity as a boy, as a kid, as like a 10-year-old, was the fact that, my father's the eldest of 7, my mum's one of 5, and my family gatherings were around such things as younger uncles' weddings, younger aunts' weddings, younger cousins' baptisms. We would have grace at meals. It was just a standard thing we did. We would, if guests came in, we'd make sure we'd sort of, as kids, we'd grab their hand and say, no, not yet, not yet, you're going to be embarrassed. And we'd just do a grace, a very simple grace. And we, had a crucifix in the house, but I equally wouldn't say we were Captain Catholic. It's not as though that's all we did. We spent as much time probably watching sport as we did doing any family prayer. For instance, I had never gone to an Easter Saturday vigil until I became a Jesuit, because the parish I grew up in had a very small church, and Dad said, we're not going along. There's too many people who go on that day. We can't get in. So we used to go on Easter Sunday. Easter Saturday, I love. It's my favourite liturgy of the year. It's the story of God's people. It covers from the early Jewish history through then into the history of the Christian community and through into the community of faith gathered on that night. So I actually never experienced that as a kid. Now, I don't actually think I missed anything, but insofar as we did other stuff. But anyway, so as part of my heritage, my tradition. When I was leaving high school, I went to a Jesuit Catholic high school in Australia, a place called St Ignatius College, Riverview. I had started Chinese study at that school, and I'd met a number of Jesuits who were teaching us. And so when I was a 17-year-old boy, I thought, okay, there are a number of trajectories in my life. I could be, don't laugh, a wallaby. You laughed, I told you not to. What to you? I wanted to be a wallaby, I wanted to be a diplomat, I wanted to work for the Australian government and deal with China, and I wanted to be a priest. I thought about being a priest. Now, this story could go several ways from this direction, but there were a number of young ladies on the scene at the time who were rather attractive as well. And last time I told that story, I had a BC student break down in tears for about 20 minutes on Saturday. So I'm not going to go there, all right? But I'll just simply say that there was all of life's choices in front of me. So what did I do instead? I went to China. I went to China for a year. And I loved China. It was fantastic. And I came back and I then started Chinese language study at university in Australia. And I was doing Chinese history, Chinese politics. In 1989, I'd come back from a year overseas and I was doing my first year studies. Freshlings, hands up. You're not alone, and it gets better, all right? Freshling, it's cute, it's nice for freshmen. Yes, freshmen. It's gender inclusive, all right? Because then you become seniors and eagles and you fly away. So little freshlings, all right, grow into eagles, all right? Freshlings, hands up, yep, it gets better, right? So when I was a freshling myself back in the day, last century in 1989, now I think about it, anyone born that year? Not you, Eric, doesn't count. I was doing my first year subjects and I was looking at the unfolding of the events that led to June 4, 1989, Tiananmen Square, Beijing. I'm getting given ridiculous assignments. You guys get very good assignments. And as I'm watching TV and I'm watching China unfold, I'm watching this mess. And these are my people. I mean, I had studied in Beijing and Shanghai, and these people in Shanghai were my classmates. I'd spent half a year in a high school with, I was the only foreigner within a class of 40 high school classmates. And so my mates were not in Beijing. They were not getting killed by the government. But they could have been. And I made a decision then at that time, well, I'm going to commit my life to somehow being with the Chinese people, because I had received this wonderful hospitality and welcome and love, and I thought I'm going to be a part of their lives. But I don't know if you can tell this, but I'm not actually Chinese. So obviously, I'd have to do that as an Australian. Altogether, g'day. So I knew that I would have to be someone building bridges between these communities. So for me, when I was at university, it was very much a journey of exploration and discovery, and indeed with my faith. To the extent that when I was in my third year, so your junior year, it's a little bit different in Australia, but in my junior year, I was working for a human rights centre in a red light district in Sydney. We don't live in colleges on the whole, we actually rent or share housing. And I was renting a little place by myself. And I remember one time I came home and a bloke is shooting up on my back doorstep, and another time the coppers are waking me up early on a Saturday morning because I'd obviously watched too much TV the night before. And anyway, because there'd been someone injured in the street, did I know anything? Oh, so it was a really interesting area. And I was working at a Jesuit human rights centre. I'd reconnected with some Jesuits who I knew, and they were working in terms of social justice. One of them was a fellow called Frank Brennan. Frank Brennan is the Gasson Chair for next year, so he'd be an excellent person for C21 and for Agape Latte. Frank is a lawyer, deals with Indigenous issues, Aboriginal issues, deals with land rights, deals with refugee reform. He's just a total great guy. Here I am, I'm now a senior working there, and it's one of those nights in Sydney when it just rains. It was bucketing down. Frank had left earlier that day, had asked me to do something, and I said, yeah, I'll get it done. Rushes in, said, have you done it? I said, oh yeah, I'm about to do it. And he goes, well, I need it done. And he rushes off, and I'm there, I'm finishing an honours thesis, I'm doing all this stuff, I'm applying for foreign affairs, I'm paying my rent, And I'm there, it's about 11 o'clock. And Frank comes back in, he's just been talking to government. He just had a dinner with government advising them on something. I said, how did it go? He said, well, actually, just stop for a minute. I really want to apologise for how I spoke with you earlier. And I'd forgotten, I mean, he just, he said, I need it done. Can you get it done? I have an undergraduate research fellow who's great. Can I hear it from the Pungos? That's right. So fantastic. And you'll get another one later. And he thought he had spoken really sharply to me. And I thought, well, here he is. He's just been dealing with government about heavy issues. And in the back of his mind is his sense of how he's treating a 21-year-old, 22-year-old back in his office, And I thought that's pretty cool, I was writing this thesis on human rights in China, and this fella's dealing with social justice in, this really interesting area. And he comes in and basically apologises. And I thought, well, that's pretty impressive. This priest who deals with government and he's concerned about a 22-year-old. Anyway, it's a long story. We can extend it as much as you like. But the short answer is it was a rainy Sydney night, torrential rain, and I'm sitting in this office in this sketchy area, and I hear the door creak open, and I think, well, look, Frank has obviously forgotten that he's forgotten something. So he came in, and I hear these steps climbing up, and I told you it's bucketing down. It's like this huge torrential rainpour, And then I hear this knock on the door. So you see, if anyone had theatrical moments, they just would have gone, knock, knock. Thank you, here we go, thanks very much. I hear this knock on the door, and I turn around, and there's a bloke there with hair more daggy than my own, flat and all this. He's looking at me, and his eyes are kind of large, and he's totally saturated, absolutely saturated. It's cold, it's rainy, it's wet, on a dark, stormy night. This man came to my door, and there he is, and he's there. And he says to me, I look at him, and he goes, I'm cold. I'm cold. Now, I'm not dumb. I'm a bit silly at times, but I'm not dumb. I look at him and go, well, yeah, fair enough, mate, because you're naked. I got this stark, naked, wet man on my doorstep, looking eye to eye. Looking eye to eye, you know? That's how much he's doing it, you know? We'll do that one more time. No, we won't. And anyway, so, you know, I've got this bloke, and I'm 22. I got no idea. What am I going to do with this naked man on my doorstep? You hearing any biblical references at any stage, you know? And so I went, right, check that. I call up Frank and say, look, Frank, because he was in the presbytery next door. How you going? He goes, yeah, good. You know, he'd had this heavy day and he's in bed and it's about 11:30 or whatever. And he says, what's up? I said, well, look, there's this very stark naked man on my doorstep, you know? And he goes, and I was thinking, you know, I have no idea what. And he said, are you okay? Are you okay? First response. I went, yeah, look, I actually am, but I wouldn't, you know, I'd appreciate a little bit of help, advice, accompaniment, you know? So anyway, so he said, I'll be down in, you know, 5 minutes. So I went outside and I grabbed, I mean, what do you throw away? I don't know, Notre Dame shirts? You know, anyway, so I got one of those that was in the bin, and this guy, we dressed him up. And the guy was suffering, you know, he had mental illness. He'd had an episode and he'd torn all his clothes off and wandered around the place, and the light was on because this idiot student was there doing work very late. Sleep cures all. Go to bed early. Do not send me emails at 2 a.m. Do not Twitter me at 2 a.m. I might respond, you know. Good message from me too. Anyway, so, and Frank put the bloke in the car and took him to a hostel, and we looked after him, and he was fine. And so the short answer is, when I was looking in that senior year and I was looking around for what I wanted to do, I'd applied to work for the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade in Australia, which is like your State Department, because by then I had Chinese language, I had Chinese history and culture, I had, you know, significant experiences. And I got that job. And that's a big job. It's a good job. It's a great job. But it wasn't for me, you know. And I thought, well, who do I want to be like? And I thought back to my parish, I thought back to the desires of when I was younger, and I looked at the example of these Jesuits. There were others besides Frank who were very engaged in the world, who were very engaged with dealing with issues of social justice, and were clothing a naked man on their doorstep very late at night. And I thought, if I could actually turn out in any way like that, I'd be pretty proud of that. I would think I'd turned into a good guy, you know? There's much more to the story, but so how did I become a Jesuit? Family culture, life experiences, and seeing the example of people who are genuinely walking the walk, who are trying to help people through not only the professional world they dealt with, which is what we as Jesuits try to do. We try to be engaged in any number of worlds, be very educated, but equally, you got a naked man on your doorstep. What's your first reaction? Help him. Mine was to help him, I just didn't actually know how at that stage, you know. So, you know, we grow in that journey, but for me it was like, if I want to follow Jesus in this world, well, here's not a bad example of how to do it, you know. So it's a long answer to the question, how do you become a Jesuit? That's something about me. Let me tell you something else about me. I've been told to tell a number of stories. We'll kick it off at some time. We'll close it down sometime. So China's a part of my world too, and I find myself coming fully alive when I'm in China. I mean, I'm kind of alive here. I mean, I've, you know, got so much bloody work to do. C21 invites me all the time to do all the, you know, play basketball, throw frisbees, do this, that. I'm trying to teach 286 students. Can everyone ask me about questions that they can probably work out by themselves? So, to the extent that I've actually put on my bloody blackboard thing, I am not a fishing instructor. Or actually, I am a fishing instructor. I'm not a fishmonger. I'm here to actually teach you to fish, learn to learn. I'm not here to give you a fish so you can eat for a day. So next time you want to email your professor, stand up, push away, go for a walk, think about it. If you still need to, we're always there. But do you know how many percentage would just be declined by that amount? Anyway, we can edit that. So, China, I've become fully alive. And one of the reasons I'm fully alive is when I go over there, I'm hanging out with these Chinese Catholic communities. The Chinese Catholic Church goes back for at least 400 years in its present incarnation, in the sense that it was begun again in about 1583. It actually goes back to the 13th century and then before that to the 8th century, but it died out each time. But the present communities date their history for over 400 years. It's a wonderful story of great joy, great hope, great life, terrible oppression, terrible persecution over many, many centuries. And so for me, I love to go to be with them, to show them that this is an international church, that the stories I experience in Australia, I know the stories they experience in their own place. So for me, it's a chance to commune internationally. I think one of the really great blessings we experience at this college, this is an international university. We have people from all around the world. And what I hope is that we can share our stories and tell our stories and say, well, what do you do at Christmas? Do you celebrate on December 24 or is it December 25? You know, I'm looking out and, in Europe with a white Christmas, you know, everyone sings the first Noel and sings, Silent Night, and it's the whole thing, there's the village square, people will gather, you know. In Australia, we actually don't have a lot of snow. I mean, have you noticed that? One of the best Christmases I ever had in Australia was I was doing supply, which means I was saying masses to help out parish priests. We have some other parish priests in the house who are very busy at Christmas time, obviously, or Easter. So I, one Christmas, did, I was about a 400, 500 kilometre circuit. So that's, I don't know, we'd call it 300 miles sort of thing. So I did Saturday night, well, let's say I did Christmas Eve, I did Christmas morning, and I did Christmas midday. And I went to these different communities. And if I hadn't done that, they wouldn't have had Christmas. And they would have had a prayer service, they wouldn't have had a mass. And so I'm there, and we're one place, and out there is this beautiful ocean. And the church is about as big as this. There's about 400 people in it, you know. So I said, well, look, why don't we go outside? Let's have mass outside so everyone can get a seat. Why don't we pick up the chairs? Out we go. So what do? There's this beautiful blue ocean. So what do the people do? They put up the pews and set it up like this. So all their back, they put it up as though they're building a church outside, row upon row upon row. And here I am. I'm looking at the ocean. I said, look, I tell you what, I'll take a hit for the team. You know, I'm happy to bear the brunt of the day. Why don't we put me there? You put the chairs around in the shade. Because it was about, I don't know, it wasn't quite 100, but it was getting up there. And, we're there. And so we had this fantastic mass under the gum trees. We got to throw in kangaroos, apparently. It's truth in advertising, you know. Birds singing, all that. And it was just a beautiful moment, you know. I also experienced that when I'm in China. I experienced it with the Chinese Catholic communities in country parishes in big cities. I took some of my pengyos to China last year. I took 11 students to China in August. We had a great time. They're absolute champions, they are, and they know I love them dearly. I said, look, I'm going to Mass. It'd be, you don't have to come, but why don't you come along? It'll be interesting. We did. It's an Australian word, all right? And the poor buggers had 2.5 hours of Mass because we had over 120, I think it was even more, baptisms, university-aged people, not kiddies, not grandparents, your age. And the whole service in this church was just fantastic. There was singing and laughing and 2.5 hours of that, which can tire even priests, I think. But it was fantastic. And what I love is also the whole thing of the liturgy, the music, the things they have. You can actually hear the kind of classical Chinese stuff. Shangzhu Jiuni Trillion. And on it goes, but it's kind of cool. Xiong Wei Dan, not bad, eh? Giving you the shout out, I promised. So, so you're there and these people, and so for me, I come alive in also foreign nations, in languages other than my own, and where I'm reminded of the fact that, you know what? We're all called to be our best selves. We're all called to be what God wants us to be, which, there's that famous quotation from Irenaeus that the glory of God is one fully alive. And one fully alive is the vision of God. Now, I think it's fantastic that on our campus we have people who have decided they don't have faith, they don't believe, but they want to be a part of this community. There are people who don't know what they believe. There are people who, and peace be upon them, who are Muslim. There are people who are Jewish. There are people who are not Catholic, but maybe Protestant, evangelical, whatever. And then there's Catholics who are struggling with what it means to be Catholic. And what a blessing it is that we have a community where all of us are trying to be our best selves. As a priest, obviously I'm talking about, I'm a follower of Jesus, and I think being a follower of Jesus enables me and helps me maybe witness to what I believe is the ultimate message, which is that God is love. That's how I've experienced it. So my wish is that you experience it in your own way, but, if you want to have a chat, come and have a chat. Get now, push back from the table, think about it. I'll always actually have a chat about that first up. But anyway, so that's one aspect. And the other thing then, so I've told you about my past, told you about something about my present. What about we talk about the future for a minute? I am so excited about Pope Francis. I'm so excited because, not just because he's a Jesuit, I'm so excited because he is challenging all of us to get back to the heart of the message, which is a message of love. Who am I to judge, he says. He says the pastor must, if we're using an image where the pastor is the shepherd, well, they got to smell of the sheep. They shouldn't smell of bells and smells and mitres and big robes and rubrics and you can only walk around saying mass like this. It's actually, they've got to be where the people are at. Well, you're where the people are at because you're the people. Second Vatican Council said the joys and the hopes, the griefs and anxieties of the modern world must be the joys and the hopes, the griefs and anxieties of the church, because the church has to be part of the modern world. So I think there are occasions maybe in your own lives where you've felt that the church has not connected with you, that people of faith, and again, whatever religion, have maybe not helped you journey towards your best self. And I apologise about that. I apologise that the institutions, the communities which are meant to be the most welcoming have perhaps been exclusionary. That's not what I joined up for. That's not what I admired in Frank, or that's not what I saw in that naked bloke. I saw Christ. I saw Christ saying, help me, I'm cold. So Francis is calling all of us to help each other by forming a community of agape. And through that agape, whether it's over latte or double shot espressos, hopefully we form a community which can change the world and be the leaven that Francis is calling the Catholic Church to be. Not powerful, not talking from on high, but just indeed, check this segue, going down into the valley as sinners to pray. Thank you very much.